Katie Logan had always felt the weight of being the youngest sister in a family where glamour and turmoil were linked like threads on a costly gown. For years, she had watched from the sidelines while her older sister Brooke grabbed attention at Forrester Creations, where her name was synonymous with beauty, passion, and never-ending romantic relationships. Katie, on the other hand, followed her own path, which included health scares, a heart transplant that offered her a second chance at life, and marriage to the powerful and volatile Bill Spencer. But beneath the surface of her quiet perseverance was a craving for something greater, something completely her own. That drive culminated in the establishment of her own fashion label, Logan. The concept arose as a gift from Bill, who saw in Katie a flame that had been extinguished by years of second fiddle. He put resources into it, procuring office space, employing employees, and establishing her as the visionary in charge. Katie grabbed the opportunity with both hands. She envisioned Logan as a brand that honored understated elegance, with items that spoke to women who had overcome suffering and emerged stronger. It was personal. The name itself had layers of meaning, the familial legacy she shared with Brooke and Donna, but reclaimed in a way that felt empowered rather than taken. Securing the trademark became a modest triumph, requiring Liam's quick thinking and legal savvy to outbid Brooke and Ridge for the renewal. When the documents arrived, Katie stood in her new office, staring at the new branding on the wall, feeling for the first time that she had created something unbreakable. Eric Forrester had a significant role in the venture. The great designer, restless after decades at Forrester Creations, had discreetly agreed to contribute his expertise to Katie's project. Their partnership began casually, a handshake, mutual respect, and shared creative energy. Eric's drawings flooded in, each sketch bearing the weight of his illustrious career. Katie believed that this collaboration would help Logan stand out in a congested market dominated by Forrester's bold, dramatic approach. She imagined runway presentations where Eric's ageless refinement met her own vision of affordable luxury. Bill supported the move, but his involvement got stronger over time, infiltrating decisions that Katie had wanted to fully own. However, fissures emerged almost immediately. The fashion industry is merciless, based on perception as much as product. Whispers spread regarding the new house's origins, with some speculating that it was all about Bill's money, with Katie serving as a figurehead while Eric handled the actual labor. Brooke's reaction to the name Logan sparked a family spat that grew hotter than anyone expected. Accusations flew. Theft of intellectual property, exploitation of a family name that Brooke had been associated with through her marriage to Ridge. Katie vehemently defended her decision, claiming the trademark had expired and was fair game, but the personal insult struck hard. Sisters who had formerly helped each other through difficult times now stood on opposing sides of a developing division. The operational issues increased. Without a formal contract binding Eric and Logan, the arrangement remained fragile. Eric's health began to deteriorate. He battled to breathe and collapsed under the strain of late nights and constant pressure. Katie watched in fear as her key collaborator faded and his contributions slowed as deadlines approached. Bill pushed for contingency plans, arguing that they should maintain rights to previously generated designs, but Katie was concerned about ethics. She had offered Eric artistic freedom, not ownership over his tiredness. Meanwhile, competitors circled, recognizing a weakness in the new brand. The press coverage turned from intrigued excitement to suspicious examination, questioning whether Logan could survive without Forrester's full support or if it was doomed to be perceived as a vindictive offshoot. Financial difficulties exacerbated everything. Launching a fashion house necessitates a significant upfront expenditure in fabric sourcing, manufacturing runs, marketing campaigns, runway events, and showroom costs. Bill had sponsored much of it, but even his big finances were limited when profits did not come promptly. Early collections garnered mixed reviews. Some complimented the polished look, while others saw it as derivative and lacked the edge that distinguished Forrester Creations. Sales were behind expectations. Retail partners were hesitant to allocate shelf space to an unproven brand in a crowded, premium market. Overhead costs skyrocketed, rent in good Los Angeles neighborhoods, salaries for a growing team, and advertising budgets that swelled to compete with established competitors. Katie first refused to see the warning signs. She doubled down, spending longer hours and personally supervising fittings and modifications. She thought that passion could triumph over practicalities and that the tale of Logan, her story, would connect with customers. But reality intervened severely. As trust weakened, suppliers sought upfront payment. A significant investor withdrew after hearing tales of internal conflict. Bill's patience wore thin, and he began delivering ultimatums, reminding Katie that his investment was contingent on profitability. The pressure permeated into their marriage, transforming talks into battles over control and direction. The tipping point came gently at first, one missing salary, then another. Creditors called incessantly. Katie sought extensions and surreptitiously liquidated personal assets, but her debts increased. What began as reasonable loans grew into millions as interest piled and production delays eroded profitability. The brand's failure was not spectacular, like a big runway disaster, but rather a steady bleed. Collections remained unsold in warehouses. The scheduled flagship shop launch has been postponed indefinitely. Katie's name, once a beacon of hope, has become associated with overreach in professional circles. When the bankruptcy filing came, it felt both expected and devastating. Katie owed almost $3 million, which included vendor debts, unpaid staff severance, marketing loans, and outstanding production bills. The number looked back at her from legal papers, cold and definite. She had invested everything in this dream, her energy, her connections, her self-esteem, and it had disintegrated. The judicial hearings were mercifully brief, but the public humiliation persisted. The Logan sisters' fall from favor made headlines in tabloids, contrasting with Brooke's long-term success at Forrester. Family gatherings became strained. Brooke expressed sorrow with an underlying, "I told you so," while Bill emotionally removed himself, intent on damage management for his own reputation. Katie then retreated. She spent days at home, staring at designs Eric had left behind, wondering how ambition had evolved into hubris. She repeated her decisions, the informal agreement with Eric, the haste to take the name, and the stubbornness to back down when warnings appeared. Friends sought out, but she felt isolated, the weight of failure crushing her like never before. Her health, which had previously been delicate, remained stable, but her spirit faded. Bill recommended starting afresh with something smaller, but the enthusiasm had faded. She questioned whether she fit in the competitive world of fashion, or if she had been seeking approval in the wrong place. Even in the ruins, glimmers survived. Eric, who had recovered slightly, voiced sorrow for not formalizing their partnership sooner. Brooke offered an olive branch, acknowledging the Logan blood that flowed through their veins. Katie began to see the bankruptcy not only as a loss, but also as a harsh lesson in boundaries, contracts, and the risks of unrestrained ambition. She pondered gentler hobbies, such as consulting or teaching younger designers outside of the spotlight. The $3 million debt would take years to discharge and repay, casting a shadow over her, but it also released her from the illusion of power she had held onto. Walking around the streets of Los Angeles, Katie views Forrester advertisements with detached eyes. She no longer feels the sting of comparison as strongly. The Logan brand may have crumbled under its own weight, but the lady behind it survives. Bankruptcy peeled away the facade, revealing raw honesty. Katie Logan, once defined by her sister's shadow and then by her own failed empire, begins to reinvent herself, not via logos or runways, but through resilience formed in the quiet aftermath of disaster. The road ahead is unpredictable, marked by repayments and rebuilding, but she knows that even in spectacular failure, she can survive. In both soap operas and real life, surviving frequently opens the door to unexpected second acts. Katie remained alone in the silent office long after everyone else had gone home. The city lights shone through the big glass windows, reflecting on the polished desk that once represented achievement, ambition, and optimism. Now the room felt strange, too big, too quiet, and too heavy with the weight of what had happened. On her desk was a stack of documents that she had reviewed several times in the previous weeks. The numbers never changed. Regardless of how many times she looked, The result was the same. $3 million. That was what she owed. Outsiders thought the Logan brand's downfall was instantaneous, but Katie saw it as a long, agonizing unraveling that she desperately attempted to stop. When she first began the brand, everything seemed conceivable. Logan's name evoked history and influence, and people believed in what she was attempting to accomplish. It was intended to signify elegance, strength, and the spirit of women who refused to be constrained by circumstance. Initially, investors were thrilled. Orders arrived faster than the team could manage them. Fashion editors discussed the brand as if it was the next great thing. Katie recalls standing in the production room with her tiny but motivated team, watching racks of garments being prepped for shipment. Everyone was thrilled. Everyone believed they were witnessing the start of something remarkable. She believed it too. However, the fashion business was unforgiving. Trends shifted swiftly, expenditures soared abruptly, and competition became more fierce each month. At first, the challenges appeared controllable. A shipment delay here, a production fault there, nothing too difficult to fix with a little more effort and patience. Katie worked all day and night to keep things rolling. She negotiated with suppliers, had emergency meetings with designers, and reassured concerned investors that the brand was still viable. For a while, those efforts were effective. Sales stabilized, and she assumed the worst was over. Then the major trouble started. One of the company's largest retail partners unexpectedly canceled a large order. The rationale was vague, something about changing market strategies, but the effect was immediate. Thousands of items of goods remained unsold in warehouses. Storage expenses increased. Cash flow tightened. Katie attempted to locate alternate purchasers, but the trend cycle had already moved on. Styles that appeared intriguing a few months ago were now regarded outmoded. The corporation had spent millions of dollars to produce them, and they were now worth barely a fraction of their initial cost. Investors became apprehensive. Phone calls that were once supportive became tense and impatient. Emails got shorter and more demanding. Meetings that were once filled with hope have devolved into lengthy debates about losses and risk management. Nonetheless, Katie refused to quit up. She was confident that if she could keep the company together long enough, the brand would rebound. She went forward with new designs, marketing initiatives, and collaborations, hoping to rekindle interest. But each attempt appeared to come a bit too late. Production expenses have continued to climb. Shipping delays resulted in missed deadlines. Customers who had previously been loyal began to gravitate toward emerging brands that were speedier and more adaptive. By the time Katie recognized how terrible the issue had gotten, the company was already in debt. The financial reports were more difficult to read each month. Expenses surpassed revenue in ways that cannot be explained by temporary setbacks. The accountants attempted to relay the information calmly, but their voices conveyed the quiet apprehension of experts who had previously seen similar scenarios. Katie sat through those talks with a resolute attitude, but deep down she felt the ground sliding beneath her. She had established the Logan brand with such hope, and now she was seeing it fall piece by piece. The ultimate blow was delivered during a meeting with the board of investors. They had gathered in a conference room overlooking the city skyline, where they had previously celebrated the brand's early success. This time, the atmosphere was entirely different. The numbers were projected on a big screen. Losses. Debt. Unsold inventory. Revenues are declining. Katie listened as the financial expert described the situation in precise, measured terms. The company no longer had the wherewithal to continue operations. Even with aggressive restructuring, the debt remained too great. $3 million. That was the figure looking back at them. Following the presentation, the room fell silent. No one seemed eager to speak first. Finally, one of the investors leaned in and asked Katie the question she had been dreading. What are the options? The answer arrived swiftly, but it did not provide relief. Bankruptcy. The word lingered in the air like a thunder cloud. Katie felt her chest tightening. She had heard about this possibility, but hearing it uttered aloud made it uncomfortably real. The Logan brand, her brand, was complete. The legal and financial processes moved quickly over the next few weeks. Lawyers reviewed the contracts. Accountants examined each transaction. Creditors submitted claims. Katie went to meeting after meeting, signing contracts and answering questions about the decisions she took during the company's rise and decline. Each discussion felt like a reminder of a lost dream. Friends and coworkers tried to console her by reminding her that many successful people had declared bankruptcy at some point in their careers. They said that failure did not define a person. But it was difficult to see things in that light when the repercussions were so immediate. The debt did not disappear just because the company failed. Katie's still owing $3 million. Some nights, she laid awake, reviewing every decision she had made since the brand's introduction. She questioned whether things might have ended out differently if she had acted sooner, selected different companions, or taken less chances. Regret became a daily companion. At the same time, she couldn't ignore the emotional impact of losing something she'd worked so hard to create. She had never considered the Logan brand to be only a company. It expressed her idea that she could create something important and self-sufficient. Losing it was like losing a piece of herself. The announcement of the bankruptcy circulated fast among the business and fashion communities. Online articles described the brand's ascent and demise. Some writers emphasized the challenges of the fashion industry, while others saw the event as a warning tale about ambition and financial danger. Katie avoided reading the majority of those pieces. She knew the story well enough. Instead, she concentrated on the practical tasks needed to move forward. She met with financial consultants to devise a debt management strategy. It wouldn't be simple, but there were organized choices that would allow her to return her debts over time. The road ahead would demand patience, discipline, and a determination to rebuild her life from the ground up. The transition was sobering for someone who had previously led a profitable business. Katie sold various personal possessions to alleviate the immediate burden of debt. She downsized and simplified her life in unexpected ways. At first, the changes seemed overwhelming. However, something unexpected began to occur. Katie was able to think straight again after being relieved of the continual burden of running the failing firm. She began to reflect on what she had learned while establishing the Logan brand. Despite the tragic finish, there were moments of genuine accomplishment. She had created positions for brilliant designers and employees. She has launched collections that customers adored. For a while, the brand stood out in a very competitive industry. These successes did not vanish simply because the firm failed. Katie began meeting with former coworkers and mentors to share what they had learned from the experience. Many of them recounted stories of their own setbacks, collapsed companies, failed investments, and missed opportunities. All of the stories shared a common theme: resilience. Success rarely took a direct route. Katie gradually came to recognize that, while bankruptcy was heartbreaking, it did not mark the end of her professional career. It was a chapter in a larger story, one filled with blunders, progress, and hard-earned insight. She still had to confront the reality of her $3 million debt, but she also had information that could not be taken away. The peaceful office, where she once examined the company's financial disaster, evolved into something else in her recollection. Instead of reflecting defeat, it reminded her of the moment she faced reality and decided to continue moving forward. Katie knew the path ahead would be long. Rebuilding trust, financial stability, and confidence would take several years. But for the first time since the Logan brand failed, she allowed herself to believe in a future beyond bankruptcy. The numbers on those documents may have marked the end of one goal, but they did not have to define the rest of her life.